The night before the largest military invasion in human history, a man sat alone and wrote a letter. His name was Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of Allied Forces in Europe. The letter was short. It was an apology for the thousands of men he was about to send to their deaths. He folded it, placed it in his pocket, and gave the order. Over 150,000 men crossed the English Channel that night. Many of them were teenagers. Most had never seen combat. Some were so seasick they could barely stand. They were about to storm the most heavily fortified coastline in history, and the generals knew, they had calculated it, modeled it, accepted it, that a massive number of them would never make it off the beach. This is the real story of D-Day, not the version you learned in school. The deception, the catastrophic failures, the moments where everything nearly fell apart. And the men who died in the darkness, alone, in water that was already red. By the spring of 1944, Nazi Germany had occupied Western Europe for 4 years. France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Norway, Denmark, all under German control. The Soviet Union was fighting back in the east, bleeding Germany slowly, but at a catastrophic cost. Over 1 million Soviet soldiers had already died. The Allies, America, Britain, Canada, knew that to end the war, they had to do something that had never been done before. They had to invade, across open water, directly into the guns. Eisenhower had been planning Operation Overlord for over a year. The logistics alone were staggering. Nearly 7,000 ships, 11,000 aircraft, 156,000 troops on the first day alone. They needed a coastline long enough to spread German defenses thin. They needed surprise. They needed near-perfect weather. And they needed an enormous, elaborate lie. Before a single soldier set foot on a beach, the Allies launched one of the most audacious deception operations ever conceived. It was called Operation Fortitude, and its goal was simple: make Hitler believe the invasion was coming somewhere else entirely. They built a fake army, literally. Thousands of inflatable rubber tanks, fake landing craft, fake airfields, fake radio traffic filling the airwaves with false orders and fictional troop movements. They even gave this ghost army a commander, General George Patton, the most feared American general in Europe, to make the Germans believe it was real. Because the Germans respected Patton, they feared him, and they couldn't imagine the Americans wasting him on a secondary operation. The deception pointed everything toward Pas-de-Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel, the most logical invasion site. Hitler was convinced. His generals were convinced. They stationed their most powerful armored divisions there, waiting. The real invasion would come 200 miles away, in Normandy. And even after D-Day began, even after Allied troops were dying on the beaches, Hitler refused to release his panzer divisions from Pas-de-Calais. He thought Normandy was a feint, a distraction. That decision may have saved the invasion. The night before the beach landings, over 13,000 American paratroopers boarded planes in England. They were the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. Their mission, drop behind enemy lines in darkness, seize key roads and bridges, and prevent German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. It was a mission built on chaos, and chaos is exactly what they got. Heavy cloud cover and intense anti-aircraft fire scattered the formations almost immediately. Paratroopers who were supposed to land together were dropped miles apart. Some landed in flooded fields the Germans had deliberately inundated and drowned under the weight of their equipment before they even fired a shot. Some landed alone in the middle of German positions. Some never found their units for days. In some ways, the chaos accidentally helped. German commanders, receiving reports of paratroopers landing in dozens of different locations, couldn't determine where the main attack was coming from. The confusion bought time. Precious, bloody time. But for the men on the ground, scattered and alone in the dark in enemy territory, it was a nightmare. Private John Steele of the 82nd Airborne landed on a church steeple in the town of Sainte-Mère-Église and hung there, playing dead, for 2 hours while the battle raged below him. He survived. Most of the men who landed in that town square did not. At 6:30 in the morning on June 6, 1944, the ramps dropped, and men walked into the water. 5 beaches, Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword. Each one its own story. But one of them became a symbol of everything brutal and necessary about that day. Omaha Beach. Omaha was the deadliest beach by far, and it nearly destroyed the American assault entirely. Almost everything that could go wrong did. The preliminary bombing that was supposed to obliterate the German defenses missed. Completely. The bombs fell miles inland, killing French cows and trees but leaving the bunkers untouched. The amphibious tanks, designed to float to shore and provide cover, were launched too far out in rough seas. 27 of 32 sank almost immediately. The tank crews drowned inside them. The first wave of infantry hit the beach with almost no armor support, no cover, and the full weight of German machine guns trained directly on them. The Germans at Omaha weren't the second-rate garrison troops the planners had expected. An elite German division had moved into the area for training exercises just days before the invasion. Nobody had updated the intelligence. Men died before they reached the sand. The water around the landing craft turned red. Soldiers who jumped off the ramps into water over their heads, weighed down by 70 pounds of equipment, simply sank. Those who made it to shore found no cover. The beach was flat. The German bunkers were built into bluffs above, firing straight down. Company A of the 116th Infantry Regiment landed in the first wave. Within minutes, every single officer was dead or wounded. Within 15 minutes, the company had effectively ceased to exist. By mid-morning, the situation at Omaha was so catastrophic that American commanders offshore were considering abandoning the beach entirely and redirecting troops elsewhere. They didn't. And the reason they didn't comes down to small groups of men, sergeants, lieutenants, private soldiers, who simply refused to die lying still. The turned Brigadier General Norman Cota walked upright along the beach under fire, forcing paralyzed soldiers to move. He reportedly said, "2 kinds of people are staying on this beach, the dead and those who are going to die. Now let's get the hell out of here." Small groups began cutting through wire, scaling the bluffs, flanking the bunkers from behind. One by one, the German positions fell silent. By nightfall, Omaha was secured, at a cost of somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 American casualties in a single day. The exact number is still disputed. The other beaches. At Utah Beach, American forces got lucky. A navigational error pushed the first wave to a less defended section of coast. Casualties were far lower than expected. At Gold and Sword, British forces fought through heavy resistance, but secured their objectives by evening. At Juno, Canadian troops faced some of the heaviest casualties per capita of any beach, but pushed further inland on D-Day than any other Allied force. By midnight on June 6, 1944, the Allies held a foothold in France. It was 5 miles wide and a mile deep in most places, and it had cost roughly 10,000 Allied casualties in one day. What most people don't know is how close D-Day came to being a catastrophic failure, and not just at Omaha. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, in command of German coastal defenses, had a theory. He believed that if the Allies landed and were not thrown back into the sea within the first 24 hours, Germany would lose the war. He called it the longest day. He was right, and he almost stopped it. Rommel had been reinforcing the beaches obsessively, adding millions of obstacles, mines, and fortifications. He wanted the Panzer tank divisions positioned right behind the coast, ready to counterattack within hours of any landing. But Hitler overruled him. The Panzer reserves would remain under Hitler's personal command. They could only be released on his direct order. On the morning of June 6th, Hitler was asleep. His staff refused to wake him. By the time he was briefed and by the time the order was given, it was too late. The Allied beachhead was established. The panzers moved, but into a storm of Allied air power that tore them apart before they reached the coast. Hitler's ego, his obsession with personal control, may have cost Germany its last real chance to stop the invasion. The liberation of Paris came 11 weeks later. Germany surrendered less than a year after D-Day. The men who stormed those beaches in the dark, most of them barely adults, changed the course of history in a single morning. At the Normandy American Cemetery above Omaha Beach, there are 9,388 white marble crosses and stars of David. Each one is a name, a face, a family that got a telegram instead of a son. Eisenhower's apology letter, the one he wrote the night before, prepared for the possibility of failure, was never sent. He kept it. It was found in his jacket weeks later. It read, in part, "The troops, the air and the navy did all that bravery and devotion to duty could do. If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone." The invasion succeeded. The apology was never needed, but he kept the letter anyway. Maybe because he knew that success doesn't undo what it cost, and that some debts can never be repaid.